Have you ever stopped to consider that something which would typically take 12 months can be achieved in just 30 days? It sounds impossible, doesn't it? I thought so too, until one day I realized that the difference between the impossible and the inevitable lies in the way you think. It isn't time that transforms your life, it's the consciousness you infuse into it, and when consciousness shifts, time bends. For years, I lived in debt, adrift, trapped in a cycle of frustration. I worked hard, but nothing ever changed. Then a book, Think and Grow Rich, crossed my path, and with it, a phrase that became my turning point. You can achieve anything if you follow the instructions correctly. I didn't believe it immediately. I just decided to try. And in less than 1 year, the broke man I was began earning more than $100,000 monthly. What changed? My mind. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. It all began when I realized that what held me back wasn't a lack of opportunities, but the way I vibrated in the face of life. For a long time, I believed that success was a matter of physical effort, of hours worked, of sweat poured out. But there was something strange. I saw people working just as hard as I was, or even less, yet prospering with ease. And I also saw extraordinarily dedicated, intelligent individuals, full of good intentions, but trapped in an endless cycle of bills, debt, and frustration. It was then that a question began to echo within me. If we all have the same 24 hours each day, why do some multiply their results while others barely manage to survive? The answer wasn't external, it was internal. The entire universe is energy. Every thought, every emotion, every word you utter creates a frequency. It's like a radio station. You only hear the right music when you tune into the correct frequency. Abundance works the same way. I used to live on the frequency of scarcity, and without realizing it, I was sending the world the message, I don't have, I can't, I'm unable to. And the universe obediently returned precisely that to me, more situations confirming that belief. The curious thing is that I considered myself a realist. I told myself, I'm just facing the facts. But I didn't realize that those facts were in reality my own creations. The reality you live today is a mirror of the frequency you maintain daily. I remember one day, sitting in silence, I realized something profoundly unsettling. I spent more time thinking about what I feared than what I wanted, and everything I feared ended up happening. It was as if my fears held more power than my dreams, and that's how it is for most people. They wake up thinking about bills, work, responsibilities, difficulties. Their energy is one of survival, not creation. They are constantly reacting, never choosing. But life changes when you stop reacting and start consciously creating. Have you ever noticed how during certain periods it seems like everything goes wrong at once? The car breaks down, a payment is late, someone gets sick, an unexpected event arises, and suddenly it feels like the entire universe is against you. But what's actually happening is a vibrational sequence. Each worry feeds the next, and you enter a magnetic field of chaos. Now, imagine the opposite, waking up with a feeling of genuine gratitude, even without apparent reasons. The vibration shifts, and with it everything begins to reorganize itself. Traffic flows better, people treat you differently, opportunities appear out of nowhere. This isn't coincidence, it's energetic coherence. Once at a seminar, a woman stood up and said to me, "Bob, I do everything right, but nothing changes. Does the law of attraction not work for me?" I looked into her eyes and asked, "When you think about what you want, do you feel joy or anxiety?" She replied, "Anxiety." I smiled and said, "Then it's not what you want that's vibrating. It's the fear of not having what you want." That made her cry, because she realized that with each visualization, she was reinforcing absence, not presence. This is what thousands of people do without realizing it. They ask for the new while remaining emotionally attached to the old. Change begins when you consciously decide what you will feel. It's not about denying reality. It's about choosing the energy with which you'll face it. When I started to change my vibration, nothing seemed to happen at first. The bills were still there, the challenges continued, but something inside me was different. I no longer saw it as defeat, but as a sign of transition. And the more I maintained that new frequency, the more the external world realigned itself. An unexpected client would appear, an invitation would emerge, a new idea would sprout. Everything began to flow. People think they need to see to believe, but the truth is the opposite. You need to believe to see. The brain is an antenna that tunes into possibilities. If you vibrate fear, you tune into scarcity. If you vibrate faith, you tune into opportunities. Modern quantum physics, even being an abstract field, already demonstrates that the observer's consciousness affects the observed outcome. This isn't mysticism, it's science. And that's why you can never expect something to change externally before it changes internally. The external world is merely a reflection of the internal world. I used to tell myself, when I have more money, I'll be happier. And the universe would reply, when you are happier, you will have more money. Happiness, gratitude, and confidence are the fuel of creation. They raise your frequency and open invisible doors. Everything you seek already exists in potential. You just need to align with its vibration. When the mind expands, the universe reorganizes itself to accommodate it. That's why when consciousness awakens, the impossible begins to seem logical. And this is where many get lost. They want to change results, but they continue thinking, feeling, and acting in the same way. They want a new chapter, but they refuse to let go of the old story. Consciousness is the switch of transformation. It's the moment you decide to stop living by default and start living by intention. When you understand that nothing changes if you don't change first. And it's at that instant that the entire universe begins to conspire in your favor, because you finally become the energy of what you desire, not what you fear. This is how the awakening of consciousness transforms 1 year of struggle into 30 days of extraordinary results. Everything that exists in the physical world was once an image in someone's mind. An airplane, a skyscraper, a symphony, even the cell phone in your hands. Everything began as an idea. And the same goes for your results. You can never live something you haven't first built in your imagination. I learned this when I realized my mind functioned like a projector. What I visualized internally became the movie I watched externally. The problem was that, for years, the movie I was projecting was full of fear, doubt, and scarcity. And the universe obediently merely reproduced that in my life. The mind doesn't understand no. When you say, I don't want to be in debt anymore, the image you create is precisely that of debt. And that's what you feed. The human brain works with images, not with words. It was when I understood this that everything changed. I began to visualize what I wanted with almost palpable clarity. I saw myself in a spacious house, with natural light streaming through the windows, smelling fresh coffee in the morning, and feeling the tranquility of knowing all my bills were paid. I didn't just think about it, I felt it. That's the difference between dreaming and creating. When emotion joins the image, the subconscious mind accepts it as truth, and the body begins to act in harmony with this new vision. Science confirms this. Researchers at Harvard Business Review discovered that people who visualize their goals with emotion are 23% more likely to receive promotions, raises, or new opportunities. This happens because the brain activates the same neural circuits as when you experience the real thing. In other words, when you imagine something with emotional intensity, you are mentally rehearsing success. And the mind, once conditioned, will do everything to align the physical world with this new reality. But what most people do is the opposite. They visualize their fears with surgical precision. They close their eyes and see overdue bills, failures, rejections, scarcity. And the more emotion they pour into it, fear, guilt, anxiety, the more real it becomes in their lives. The mind is fertile and neutral. It doesn't judge, it merely creates according to what you plant in it. And what you feel most frequently is what you're asking the universe to repeat. I remember the day I decided to test this practically. I took a piece of paper and wrote with conviction, I am so happy and grateful now because I earn $10,000 per month. I had no idea how it would happen, but every morning and every night I would read it aloud and imagine myself already living that way. I saw the bank statement, the smiles of the people around me, the freedom to choose without fear. The how wasn't my problem, It was the universe's. My job was to keep the image alive. And a few weeks later, opportunities began to emerge that I hadn't even perceived before. Nothing changed externally, only internally. People underestimate the power of a clear mental image. They say they don't have time to visualize, but they spend hours worrying, which is exactly the same process, only destructive. If you can expend energy imagining the worst, you can also use that same energy to create the best. The mind is like a garden. It doesn't decide what will grow, it merely responds to what you plant. And if you water doubt every day, you cannot expect to harvest prosperity. Once a woman came to me saying she wanted to buy her first house, but everything seemed impossible. She would say, "Bob, I look at my bank account and all I see is debt." I told her, "Stop looking at your account and start looking at the house." I guided her to visit properties, take pictures, imagine herself opening the door, feeling the floor under her feet. She began doing this daily, even without any money. In 3 months, she received an unexpected job offer that tripled her income. If you ask me how that happened, I'd say, the universe responded to the clarity of the image. Because the universe loves decided minds, what makes visualization work isn't just seeing but feeling and believing that it's already yours. And the secret lies in repetition. The subconscious mind doesn't change with force, but with frequency. The more you repeat an image imbued with emotion, the more it becomes part of your identity. And when you believe yourself to be prosperous, creative, and confident, opportunities begin to recognize you in that way. External reality bends to internal conviction. What you imagine daily is determining the pace of your life. You can continue projecting images of worry and limitation, or you can start projecting the most extraordinary version of yourself. The universe doesn't choose for you. It merely reflects the image you hold within your mind, and that's why, when the vision is clear, the path appears. The mind sees first, the body follows after, and the world inevitably adjusts to the frequency of what you believe is possible. Fear is the most paralyzing emotion that exists. It doesn't need to shout to dominate you. A whisper is enough. Sometimes it disguises itself as prudence, as logic, even as responsibility. But at its core, it's the same fear that prevents millions of people from living the life they desire. I realized this when I looked back and saw how many opportunities I had let slip away simply because I doubted myself. The fear of failure is what makes people stay in jobs they hate, in relationships that limit them, and in routines that drain their soul. They say they're waiting for the right moment, but the right moment never comes, because fear is a master at fabricating convincing excuses. I clearly remember the day I was invited to give my first lecture. I had studied, practiced, and yet, minutes before stepping onto the stage, my mind started screaming, "What if you freeze? What if you forget everything? What if they laugh at you?" Fear told me it was safer to retreat. But then I realized something. Fear only exists before the action. It lives in anticipation, never in experience. The instant I took the first step and started speaking, it disappeared. What remained was energy. Fear transformed into power. It's like that with everything in life. You don't eliminate fear by thinking, you transform it by acting. The human mind has a curious mechanism. It prefers the known, even if it's painful, to risking the new, even if it's liberating. That's why so many people self-sabotage. They want to prosper, but their subconscious fears change. They want wealth, but they've been conditioned to see money as difficult, scarce, or even dangerous. When opportunity appears, they retreat, not because they aren't capable, but because the brain associates success with unknown territory. And the unknown, for a mind conditioned by fear, is interpreted as a threat. Once, at a seminar, a man told me, "Bob, I want to change, but what if I fail?" I looked at him and replied, "What if you never try?" The silence that followed was profound. He understood that true failure isn't falling, it's staying still. When you try, you gain experience. When you don't try, you lose yourself. Fear is a silent thief, and what it steals isn't money or time, but potential. It steals what you could have become. Neuroscience explains that fear activates the amygdala, a small structure in the brain that regulates our fight or flight responses. When you think of something risky, This region fires as if there were real danger, but the danger is imaginary. The brain doesn't distinguish between a lion about to attack you and the mere thought of failing in front of others. That's why so many feel dread at the thought of failing. It's a chemical reaction, not a prophecy. The good news is that the same mind that creates fear can be trained to create courage. And courage isn't the absence of fear, it's deciding to act despite it. I remember when I left the Toronto Fire Department to start my first cleaning business. I had no training, no experience, and honestly, I had no idea what I was doing. All I had was one book, a belief, and a vision. With every step, fear accompanied me. I'd wake up in the early hours thinking, what if I go bankrupt? What if everything goes wrong? But something inside me said, what if it goes right? It was that question that kept me moving, and it did go right. In less than 1 year, that business earned me more than $100,000. Fear was still there, but I had learned to walk with it. When you face fear head-on, it shrinks, but when you run from it, it grows. The mind creates monsters the size of your uncertainties. That's why I always say, fear is a compass. It points exactly to where you need to go. If something scares you, it's a sign that there's growth there. What frightens you is what will set you free. The only difference between those who win and those who give up is the willingness to push through discomfort. The pain of trying lasts a short while. The pain of regret lasts an entire lifetime. The fear of failure is the guardian of your next level. It's there to test if you truly want what you say you want. And when you move past it, you realize that the enemy was never external. It was always internal. It's the internal dialogue that repeats, you can't, you're not enough, it's not the right time. But the truth is, you'll never be completely ready. You become ready in the process. The universe doesn't wait for you to be prepared, only for you to be willing. Because fear, when understood, becomes fuel. And it's this fuel that propels those who dare to achieve in 1 month what others would take 1 year even to attempt. Fear doesn't disappear. It changes form and transforms into power when you decide to act even while trembling. For a large part of my life, I believed that the only way to earn money was by trading time for work. It was what everyone around me did. We'd wake up early, complete an 8-hour shift or more, receive a paycheck at the end of the month, and hope that somehow this would lead us to freedom. But as the years passed, I realized that this model was not only limited, but also doomed to fail. Because time is finite. And when you trade time for money, you're selling the most precious resource you possess. That's when I understood that there are 3 ways to earn money, and only one of them leads to true freedom. The first way is what I call M1, trading time for money. It's the model 96% of people live by. They work for someone, receive a fixed amount, and believe that if they work more, they'll earn more. But this rarely happens. The problem isn't the work, it's the logic. You can never get rich in this system because time is limited, and so is your energy. You can even double your effort, but you can't double the number of hours in 1 day. It's an exhausting cycle. The more you work, the less time you have to live, and the less time you have to live, the more you feel you're losing your own life. The second model, M2, is using money to generate money. Here, the game changes. Instead of trading time, you make money work for you. Investments, assets, real estate, equity, these are examples. When I discovered this principle, I had no capital at all, but I realized I didn't need much to start, only the right mindset. Rich people understand that every dollar is like a small employee that can generate more dollars if placed in the right spot. But those who think like the poor see money as something to be spent, not as something to be multiplied. And because of this, the more they earn, the faster they lose it. The third model, M3, is what truly transforms life, creating systems that function independently of your presence. This is where true freedom is born. These are businesses, products, ideas, and structures that continue producing value even when you're not around. When I understood this, I realized that financial freedom has nothing to do with working more. It has to do with building intelligence that works for you. That's how I went from a firefighter without prospects to an entrepreneur with multiple income streams. And not because I was smarter, but because I finally started thinking like someone who creates their own system, not someone who works within someone else's system. I remember a teacher I met at one of my seminars, a dedicated man, passionate about what he did, but stuck with a fixed salary and a volume of debt that left him breathless. He would say, "Bob, I love teaching, but what I earn barely covers my bills." I asked him, "Have you ever thought about teaching in a different way?" He didn't understand at first, so I suggested he transform his methods into a digital course, something that could be sold while he slept. In a few months, he created the course, promoted it on social media, and started selling. 3 months later, he already had 5 income streams and a multiplying audience. 1 year later, he resigned from the school and started living exclusively from his knowledge. The same talent, the same passion, but now with a system. That's the difference between linear effort and exponential effort. The big trap is that most people believe that more work means more money. However, that's not the universe's modus operandi. Energy demands flow, not resistance. When your existence is solely dedicated to bill paying, your mind defaults to survival mode. And a mind fixated on mere survival doesn't innovate. It simply reiterates. This is precisely why so many people dedicate their entire lives to labor and yet never accumulate true wealth. Work devoid of vision is merely activity, and activity without direction is ultimately fruitless. Authentic prosperity materializes when you master the art of multiplying your time's worth instead of simply depleting it. In our current era, the world presents opportunities that were previously beyond imagination. Armed with little more than a mobile phone, an innovative idea, and sheer determination, one can forge income streams on a global scale. Everyday individuals are converting leisure pursuits into enterprises, natural abilities into robust platforms, and accumulated wisdom into profound freedom. This isn't sorcery, it's a paradigm shift. The crucial differentiator between those who genuinely prosper and those who simply subsist lies in their fundamental perception of time and money. Individuals who flourish regard time as invaluable capital and money as a fertile seed. Conversely, those who merely get by view time as an onerous burden and money as a mere reward. Money, however, isn't a prize, it's an inherent outcome. My years of observation have taught me that true freedom isn't attained by accumulating more money. Rather, it emerges when you gain greater mastery over its generation. When you intelligently construct systems, the pursuit of money transforms from a frantic race into a steady, reliable flow. And it's this very flow that empowers you with abundant choices. Choices concerning your location, your companions, and your creative endeavors. For authentic wealth isn't quantifiable in mere dollars. Instead, it's measured by the richness of life you can experience unburdened by concerns about your next bill. This fundamentally distinguishes those who labor for money from those who skillfully make money labor for them. And this pivotal decision, take my word for it, originates solely from adopting a fresh perspective. The face of that particular man is etched in my memory. He occupied a seat in the 3rd row at a Chicago seminar. His hands, gnarled and calloused, spoke volumes of many years of strenuous work. A mechanic and a father of 2, he regarded me with a blend of aspiration and doubt. When I invited questions, he rose, wiped his palms on his trousers and declared, "Bob, I find all of this quite inspiring, but it's simply not for me. I'm just a plain, realistic man." At that precise moment, the profound weight of that single word struck me. Realistic. How many individuals, I wondered, employ this very term to rationalize their own inertia? I met his gaze and calmly responded, "It is precisely this mindset that has kept your life from transforming thus far." He fell quiet, visibly discomforted, yet the vital seed had been sown. Following the presentation, he approached me. He confided that he felt ensnared, weary from toiling for 12 hours daily, only to witness no advancement. Plagued by debt, perpetually drained, he endlessly echoed the sentiment, "Money simply isn't meant for folks like myself." In that man, I recognized the archetype of millions worldwide, decent, upright, diligent individuals, yet utterly shackled by unseen convictions. Consequently, I presented him with a challenge. For the upcoming 30 days, I want you to commit to writing down one distinct objective each day, both in the morning and before you retire for the night, just one. Furthermore, I want you to vividly envision yourself already experiencing this objective. Its apparent impossibility is irrelevant. He wavered momentarily but ultimately agreed. 3 months subsequently, a letter arrived. Enclosed was a photograph of him, beaming, standing before a modest workshop, proudly bearing his name on its facade. He penned, "I genuinely never believed this was attainable. Yet, once I began to perceive myself as capable, innovative concepts started to surface. A friend extended the use of a garage, another assisted me in acquiring pre-owned tools, and within a mere few months, I was independently repairing vehicles. Currently, I earn 10 times what I did previously, and the most astonishing realization is that the world itself didn't change. I did." That particular statement left an indelible impression upon me, for this is precisely what transpires when one's mindset shifts. Reality itself undergoes a profound reorganization. His profound transformation wasn't a result of learning a novel technique or being handed an opportunity by another. It occurred because he fundamentally altered his self-perception. Previously, he viewed himself as a restricted laborer. Subsequently, he began to perceive himself as an innovator. And when you redefine how you see yourself, you inherently redefine the scope of what you deem achievable. This encapsulates the immense power of self-perception. Individuals often convince themselves they require greater financial resources, more available time, or an increase in fortunate circumstances, when in truth, their paramount need is a fresh perspective of their own identity. Intriguingly, akin to that man, many individuals expressed to me, "But I'm a pragmatic person. I prefer tangible realities." What escapes their notice is that concrete outcomes invariably spring from unseen origins. A shift in mindset is imperceptible, yet its repercussions are profoundly manifest. It's the catalyst that transmutes a mere idea into a thriving enterprise, a fleeting dream into substantial wealth, and a deeply held desire into a lived reality. What that mechanic accomplished was a fundamental realignment of his personal frequency. He ceased resonating with fear and began to resonate with creation. And the cosmos, it must be understood, responds to vibration, not merely to wishes. He didn't petition for affluence, he became affluence. Not long afterward, I encountered another analogous instance involving a woman employed as a hairdresser. She expressed to me, "Bob, my sole desire is to live in tranquility, free from the incessant pursuit of bills." I instructed her to undertake the identical exercise, to articulate her desires in writing and vividly envision herself living that reality. Within 30 days, she began to experience a nascent self-assurance. In 3 months, she transitioned to serving clients from her home, and in less than 1 year, she proudly owned her very own salon. This wasn't mere fortuity, it was profound alignment. Her consciousness commenced operating within an entirely new paradigm of abundance, and the physical realm simply mirrored this internal shift. The common thread weaving through these narratives is that not one of these individuals awaited flawless conditions. They elected to take action irrespective of their circumstances, and this is precisely what distinguishes those who enact genuine transformation from those who merely harbor desires. The majority anticipate the perfect tableau, the precise amount of money, the opportune moment. Yet the universe responds to resolute decision, not to indecisive wavering. When you proceed with unwavering conviction, even without a clear understanding of the how, unseen forces are set into motion. Individuals materialize, opportunities unlock, and synchronous events align. This is what I refer to as the law of correspondence. The outer world invariably reflects the inner state. I have witnessed this paradigm unfold hundreds of times. Students, business owners, homemakers, adolescents, and retirees, each embarked on their journey identically by fundamentally altering the self-image they harbored. And the most remarkable phenomenon is that once an individual commences believing, they emanate an entirely distinct energy. Their gaze transforms, their demeanor shifts, their vocal tone alters, and the world in turn begins to perceive and acknowledge them in a wholly new light. Individuals who once overlooked them now begin to take notice. Opportunities that appeared firmly sealed suddenly spring open. For reality functions as a mirror. It does not reflect your aspirations, but rather your inherent being. And this was the profound lesson that Mechanic internalized. He did not attain success through the discovery of a convenient shortcut, but rather by unearthing the immense power of a decision buttressed by unwavering faith and resolute action. He possessed no blueprint for how he would achieve it. He simply decided that he would. And that singular decision proved potent enough to alter his vibrational frequency. This is a truth few grasp. The how is never your responsibility. It is the domain of the cosmos. Your singular role is to establish a clear decision and proceed in alignment with that choice. When you commit to this, your entire environment begins a profound self-reorganization. Individuals, concepts, circumstances, and even unforeseen eventualities start to coalesce, conspiring toward your advancement. The seemingly impossible seamlessly transitions into the inevitable. For what truly transforms an individual's life isn't their sporadic actions, but rather the consistent belief they hold about who they are, each and every day. If, thus far, a stirring has begun within you, if at any juncture you've experienced that familiar tightening in your chest, that unmistakable feeling that this message resonates directly with your personal circumstances, then consider this your unequivocal signal. Pause for a moment and reflect. How often have you encountered something that felt precisely crafted for your specific situation, only to allow it to slip away? How many times have you pledged to yourself that tomorrow is the day to begin, only to find an entire year has inexplicably elapsed? Indeed, this precisely encapsulates what hinders the vast majority of individuals from transforming their lives: the pervasive grip of inertia. They grasp the underlying message, they perceive the intrinsic impetus, yet they fail to act. And without decisive action, knowledge simply devolves into one more forgotten volume gathering dust on the mental bookshelf. Therefore, before you proceed, undertake a simple yet profoundly impactful action. Make a solemn commitment to your personal evolution. Hit the like button and subscribe without delay. While it may appear to be a mere digital interaction, energetically, it constitutes a powerful declaration. It's the precise instant you transmit to the cosmos the unambiguous message, "I am prepared for change." It serves as an unequivocal pledge of intent. And all significant transformation initiates with such clear intention. Life responds to resolute commitment, not to hesitant indecision. When you utter a definitive yes to your own advancement, pathways materialize that you previously had no conception of. I have personally witnessed hundreds of individuals radically transform their lives, stemming from a singular act of decision. This pivotal moment wasn't when they possessed ample financial resources, nor when they had an abundance of free time, but rather the exact instant they declared, "Enough. I am worthy of more." The very energy around you shifts instantaneously. For the universe does not comprehend mere words. It responds profoundly to vibration. When you make a commitment to something, your vibrational frequency alters, and this intrinsic alteration, by its very nature, draws forth fresh opportunities. The yes you utter today is the fertile seed from which your future harvest will spring. Perhaps you still harbor skepticism. Perhaps you're thinking, "Oh, this is just yet another motivational video." But no, it truly isn't. Every single word that has reached your consciousness was meticulously crafted to awaken something already resident within you, a latent power, simply awaiting a singular prompt. And if you are hearing this message right now, it is because life itself has determined that this is your moment. Your arrival here is no accident. Nothing is merely coincidental when the heart intuitively perceives its truth. Therefore, grant yourself permission to embark on this journey. Subscribe, express your appreciation for the video, and remain with me until its conclusion, for something far more significant is taking shape here. With every subsequent piece of content, you will discern that this transcends mere motivation. It is a profound reprogramming. Each word carries the deliberate intent to broaden your awareness and elevate your vibrational frequency to the precise level where tangible results naturally begin to proliferate. The straightforward act of subscribing signifies far more than simply following a channel. It embodies a vibrational decision. It is akin to declaring, "I opt for abundance. I embrace growth. I elect to believe once more." And in undertaking this, you are not merely modifying your current day. You are fundamentally reshaping your entire future. What you focus on expands. And right now, by directing your attention towards growth, you are fueling the energy that will sustain the transformations you wish to experience. Remember, the universe responds to clarity. If you are enjoying this content, hit the like button right now, and as you do, close your eyes for a moment and mentally say, "I choose to expand." Feel the power of those words vibrating within you. That is how change begins, not with grand gestures, but with small decisions sustained by the right intention. You do not need to have everything figured out. You just need to decide that you will no longer settle for less than you were born to be. And that simple yes can be the turning point of your story. So mark this moment. It could be the first day of the rest of your new life. In school, no one ever taught me how to think. They taught me to repeat, to memorize, to obey. From an early age, we were molded to follow rules, await orders, and fear mistakes. It is curious because education should liberate us, but what it does is trap us within an invisible pattern. School teaches you how to be punctual, how to behave, how to fit in. But it never teaches you how to create. It never teaches you how to transform an idea into freedom, a talent into wealth, a vision into reality. And that is why most people spend their entire lives studying to work on the dream of someone who learned to think for themselves. I know people with 3 diplomas who still worry about the end-of-month bills. They studied enough to become exemplary employees, but were never taught how to build something that would make them free. It is not their fault. It is the system. A system born during the Industrial Revolution, when the world needed obedient workers, not creative minds. The model has not changed, but the world has changed completely. Today, what truly matters is no longer how much you know, but how much you are capable of imagining, innovating, and adapting. And what is most frightening is that the fear of making mistakes continues to guide most people. Because since childhood, we were punished for trying something outside the norm. When we made mistakes, we were corrected. When we thought differently, we were silenced. But the truth is that every great advance was born from error, from curiosity, and from the courage to challenge what seemed impossible. Think of how many ideas were discredited before they changed the world. Steve Jobs was fired from his own company. Walt Disney was called unimaginative. Thomas Edison failed more than 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. All of them had something in common. They learned to think outside the mold, to trust their inner vision more than external approval. And I wonder, how many people are trapped today in jobs they do not love, simply because they were taught to believe that is the right thing to do? How many live in fear of taking risks because they believe that stability is synonymous with security? The irony is that the true risk lies in not changing. It lies in staying in the same place, repeating the same patterns, waiting for life to change on its own. What school never told you is that the world is commanded by those who dare to create, by those who understand that thought is the raw material of all achievement. I saw this happen before my eyes. I remember a brilliant young man who participated in one of my programs. He had an impeccable education in administration, excellent grades, but lived frustrated, afraid of dreaming too big. He followed the path the system laid out. He studied, graduated, got a job, but still he felt empty, as if something inside him knew that was not his place. He told me, "I did everything right, but nothing feels right." And I replied, "Nothing feels right because you are living someone else's plan, someone who thought before you. It is time to create your own." He began to study universal laws, to understand that the mind is the true field of creation. He started dedicating 1 hour a day to learning about money, energy, and purpose. In less than 6 months, he launched a digital project that spread across the country. The same young man who was earning less than $1,000 a month started earning 10 times more, doing something that inspired him. He did not need another diploma, just a new way of thinking, and that is what few understand. It is not technical knowledge that changes your life. It is self-knowledge. It is discovering the power to direct your mind, to trust your imagination, to see opportunities where others only see limitations. School teaches you to solve problems. Life rewards you when you learn to create solutions. The difference seems subtle, but it is gigantic. To solve is to react. To create is to command. You do not need more courses, you need more consciousness. You do not need more hours of study. You need more clarity about what you are studying and why. Because information without purpose is noise, and purpose without action is a deferred dream. True education happens when you decide to learn what the real world demands: emotional intelligence, a growth mindset, and the ability to transform ideas into value. And do you know what is most liberating? When you realize you can learn all of this on your own. Today, knowledge is everywhere, in your hands, on your cell phone, in books, videos, courses. What is lacking is not access. What is lacking is focus. While many spend hours scrolling a screen, others use the same time to build a new reality. And in a few months, the results begin to reverse. That is why I always say, true power lies in the ability to unlearn, to let go of everything they taught you about what is possible, and to start questioning every rule that kept you small. Every time you allow yourself to think independently, the universe responds with new possibilities. When you abandon the fear of making mistakes, the error transforms into a teacher. When you abandon the fear of stepping out of the norm loses its power over you. Perhaps no one has told you this before, but you are not here to fit in. You are here to expand, and expanding hurts, because it means stepping out of the comfort of repetition and walking towards the unknown. But that is precisely where the magic happens. It is when you stop being the student who repeats and become the creator who inspires. The day you start thinking for yourself will be the day the world will begin to follow you. I remember perfectly a seminar I gave in Chicago. That hall was packed, full of people of all ages and stories. But there was one man who caught my attention. He was sitting in the back rows, in his work overalls, still dirty with grease. He was a mechanic. His gaze mixed weariness and disbelief, like someone who had tried everything and still felt trapped in a cycle that never changed. At the end of the lecture, he approached me and said, "Bob, everything you say is inspiring, but it is not for me. I'm just an ordinary guy." I looked into his eyes and replied, "That is exactly why your life does not change. You have convinced yourself that you are ordinary, and the universe can only give you what you believe yourself to be." He laughed, a little awkwardly, but I realized that something within him was touched by those words. So, I challenged him. For 30 days, every day before sleeping and upon waking, write down on a piece of paper what you truly want from your life. Not what you think you can have, but what your heart truly desires. And read it aloud. Then start acting as if you are already that person. He hesitated but accepted. At first, he told me later he felt ridiculous. He thought it was just another motivational exercise. But what he did not realize was that every time he wrote and read those words, he was beginning to reprogram his own mind. People underestimate the power of repetition. They think it is silly, but that is exactly how the mind learns, through emotional repetition. Gradually, that mechanic began to act differently at work. He no longer spoke like a defeated man. He started treating every customer as if they were an investor, every service as if it were part of something greater. In 3 months, he saved enough to rent a small garage and open his own workshop. And in less than 1 year, his earnings multiplied by 10. But the real transformation was not in the numbers, but in his consciousness. He stopped seeing the world as a place of scarcity and began to see opportunities everywhere. The same man who once believed he was too realistic to dream began to inspire other mechanics to create their own businesses. And it was then that I understood something profound. The belief that most traps people is not the fear of failure. It is the fear of being too great. How many times have you thought that certain dreams were not for you? How many times have you looked at someone successful and thought, "Oh, he was lucky," or "He has something I do not have"? The truth is that no one is special by nature. What differentiates those who succeed is the decision to stop living the story they inherited and start writing their own. The mechanic from Chicago did not wait for the universe to hand him a new life. He became a new person, and the universe merely reacted to his new frequency. When you change the way you see yourself, everything changes. Different people start crossing your path. Ideas that once seemed foolish begin to make sense, and opportunities that were hidden start to emerge. Not because the world changed, but because your mind began to see what it previously ignored. That is the law of perception. You do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. And to become what you desire, you must first let the old version of yourself die, the one that doubts, that hesitates, that thinks it was not born for this. I have seen this happen hundreds of times. Ordinary people with no money, no connections, but with a firm resolve to change. They start small, like that mechanic did, but something awakens within them. Within a few weeks, the sparkle in their eyes changes, their voice shifts, their entire demeanor transforms, and when behavior transforms, results inevitably follow. It all begins when you decide to stop saying, "That's not for me," and start affirming, "This is absolutely for me, and I'm going to figure out how to get there." Perhaps the Chicago mechanic never imagined he'd own his own business, but he uncovered a truth few truly grasp. Power isn't found in luck. It resides in the daily choice to believe. He wrote to me sometime later saying, "Bob, the most incredible part is that I didn't need money to begin. I just needed to stop thinking like a poor man." That sentence resonated deeply with me because it's the absolute truth. Wealth isn't something you acquire, it's something you become. And that's how it all begins, with a new identity. When you start to perceive yourself as capable, worthy and deserving, the universe rearranges every piece around you to confirm that vision. The Chicago mechanic ceased to be merely a diligent worker and transformed into a creator of value. He didn't wait for perfect conditions, he simply began. And when you begin, the universe completes what you initiate. The lingering question is, how many opportunities have you let slip by because you believed it wasn't the right time, that you didn't have enough, or that you weren't good enough? Perhaps what's truly separating you from your next level isn't a lack of time or resources, but a limiting belief about who you truly are. That man taught me just as much as I taught him. He demonstrated that the power of transformation is accessible to anyone, anywhere, provided they are willing to think differently, because when you shift what you believe, the impossible simply becomes a matter of time. Grab a piece of paper right now and write a simple sentence. I am incredibly happy and grateful now because I earn $10,000 a month. It might seem like a trivial exercise, right? Yet what unfolds from that simple act is something few truly comprehend. When you write, you're not merely putting words on paper, you're communicating a new reality to your subconscious mind. You're issuing a direct command to the part of your mind that governs your behaviors, decisions, and perceptions. And if you do that for 30 consecutive days, something begins to shift within you. The human mind doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined with emotional intensity. That's why you can watch a movie and cry, even when you know none of it is actually happening. The brain responds to emotion, not logic. And that's the secret the world's greatest achievers have always understood, even without knowing its technical term. Science calls this experiential neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself based on the experiences we repeatedly engage in. In other words, if you vividly experience something in your mind with emotion and frequency, your brain starts to accept it as truth. Now consider this. If your brain truly believes you are already a prosperous, confident, and abundant person, how do you think it will begin to operate? Exactly. It will guide you toward choices that affirm that belief. It will filter for new opportunities, and it will perceive paths that previously went unnoticed. Because your perception system, what psychology refers to as the reticular activating system, begins to recognize what aligns with the mental image you cultivate. So when you write, I am grateful now because I earn $10,000 a month, it's not a lie, it's a seed. It's a new code being planted within your mind. And every seed requires consistency, not brute force. You don't need to fully believe it on the first day. You simply need to be willing to repeat it until the old belief begins to yield. Gradually, your emotional vibration shifts, and the universe doesn't respond to your words, it responds to your vibration. Most people live in reaction to their current reality, thereby reinforcing what they don't want. They say, "I'm broke, nothing ever works out for me, I'm not good with money," and each time they voice these thoughts, they strengthen the very pattern they wish to break. But when you begin to consciously program yourself with new declarations, your subconscious mind starts to work for you, not against you. It's like rewriting the source code of your own life. I recall a man who approached me once, explaining that he'd been trying to change his life for years, but nothing ever seemed to work. He claimed he had bad luck, that opportunities simply wouldn't appear. I proposed this exact exercise to him. Initially, he found it ridiculous, as if he were deceiving himself, but after a few days, he started to feel something different. He said that each time he wrote, he felt a lightness, as if a new space was opening within him. And it was in that space that ideas began to emerge. Within 3 weeks, he had an insight for a new business. Within 2 months, he was already executing it. And before he knew it, he was earning more than he had ever imagined possible. The change didn't originate from the paper. It came from the vibration he began to emit. When you shift your vibration, you alter the direction of your results. Because the universe is like a mirror. It doesn't give you what you want. It reflects what you are. And being is a matter of belief, not circumstance. There are people who constantly affirm positive things but see no results. And do you know why? Because they utter the words without truly feeling them. They say, "I am rich," but their body vibrates with scarcity, their heart vibrates with fear, their mind vibrates with doubt. It's like trying to tune a radio when the dial is on a different frequency. The voice comes through, but the sound isn't clear. So when you do this exercise, pause, breathe, and feel. Imagine what it would be like to already be living that reality. Visualize the home, the comfort, the freedom. Feel the tranquility of paying bills with ease, of being able to help others without fear, of knowing you have control over your financial life. Emotion is the fuel of creation. Each time you truly feel abundance as if it were real, you are activating the same neural networks that would fire if you were genuinely experiencing it. And over time, your brain begins to align your actions and perceptions with this new identity. That's how habits change, behaviors transform, and new opportunities begin to align naturally. Do this for 30 days, 30 mornings and 30 nights. Don't skip a single day. Because it's not about the phrase, it's about the frequency it awakens within you. And if you allow yourself, you will notice something powerful. Resistance will vanish, replaced by a quiet certainty, a calm confidence, as if you finally reconnected with who you always were. You don't need to force the outcome. You merely need to become the type of person the outcome seeks. And that's the true secret. It's not about doing more, it's about being more. When you write every day, you are declaring to the universe, "I choose a new identity. I choose to vibrate differently." And the universe, which is perfectly coherent, responds precisely to that, because it always says yes to what you believe. So, give it a try. Not as a game, but as a commitment to your new self. In 30 days, you won't just see a difference in your results, you'll see a difference in yourself, and when that happens, you'll understand that nothing outside of you ever needed to change. Everything was always within your mind, waiting for you to write the first line of a new story. There was one man I never forgot. He worked as a bus driver, earning just over $400 a month. Every day he drove the same route, saw the same streets, the same people, and carried the same feeling that life was simply passing him by without truly happening. When he approached me, he looked weary, not physically, but emotionally. He said he no longer believed in change, that his destiny was to drive that bus until retirement. I looked at him and saw a reflection of who I had once been. A man trapped in a routine, believing that the world is defined by what's on the outside rather than what's cultivated within. I proposed a simple challenge to him. Write every day for 30 days the sentence, "I am incredibly happy and grateful now because I earn $10,000 a month." He laughed out loud immediately. He found it absurd. He insisted it was nothing but self-deception, that words couldn't change reality. And I simply responded, "You've tried believing in failure for years and look where that has gotten you. How about trying to believe in yourself for 1 month?" He accepted, still with skepticism, but he accepted nonetheless. For the first few days, he told me he approached the exercise as an obligation. He wrote quickly without much thought, just to complete the task. But something curious happened. Around the 10th day, he began to feel something shift within him. He said that as he wrote, a voice within him began to question, what if this were possible? What if life truly could be different? This small spark of possibility marked the beginning of his transformation. His mind started to make space for a new self-image, and with each repetition, that image grew clearer. By the 20th day, he began to daydream about his own business, an executive transport service, something that could offer more comfort and personalized service. He had never considered this before, but now the idea seemed to be permanently lodged in his mind. He started jotting down plans, outlining routes, imagining a name. By the 30th day, he had not only written the phrase, but an entire business outline. There was no money, no resources, but there was clarity. And clarity is the first step to materializing anything. Over the next 6 months, he not only saved enough to buy a better car, but also found 2 partners who believed in his vision. Soon after, he quit his job and launched his own executive transportation company. When I met him again, he told me he now woke up before sunrise, not out of obligation, but out of sheer enthusiasm. He said he finally understood what it meant to work with purpose. The same man who once saw the bus as a prison now saw the steering wheel as a symbol of freedom. What had changed? It wasn't the external circumstances, it was his awareness. It was the mental image he chose to nurture until it became reality. He stopped thinking like an employee and started thinking like a creator. The universe couldn't resist this new vibration and reconfigured itself to match his new identity. That is the true magic, and it happens within the mind. Many people hear this story and think, "Oh, but he just got lucky." Luck? No. Luck is simply the name people give to what they don't understand. What he did was align the energy of his mind with the outcome he desired, and when that happens, what we call coincidences begin to multiply. People appear, ideas emerge, paths open up. But none of it is coincidence. It is vibrational correspondence. When you change the way you see yourself, the world responds differently. The bus driver didn't just change professions, he changed his identity. He stopped being the man who merely survived and became the man who created. And that's precisely what most people forget. Success isn't a destination, it's a frequency. You don't reach it by walking, you reach it by tuning in. This man taught me that true power isn't in having, but in being. Because when you are, having is merely a consequence. He could have continued writing the same story forever, a life of limitations, routine, and conformity. But he decided to pick up a pen and rewrite his own destiny. What started as a simple exercise transformed into a new reality. And perhaps you're stuck on the same road, driving in circles, believing that the path never changes. But the road changes when the driver changes, when the thought changes, when the belief changes. It all begins with a simple act of faith. Not blind faith, but faith in yourself, in your ability to create something greater than what you're experiencing today. The driver told me something I've never forgotten. "Bob, I used to think driving was my prison. Today I realize it was my training. I just needed to change the destination." And that's exactly it. Life doesn't put you in situations by chance. Everything is training for who you are becoming. The problem is that most people stop halfway through the process, believing the current scenario is the end of the story. But it isn't. It's just one chapter, and you are the author. When he told me this, I realized the secret to transformation wasn't in money, nor in work, nor in circumstances. It was in the moment he chose to think differently, because thought is the seed of everything. He didn't create a company because he wanted to get rich. He created it because he finally believed he could, and that belief is the trigger that changes everything. Ultimately, he understood something every human being needs to grasp. The external world is merely a reflection of the internal world. Nothing happens out there until something changes in here, and when internal change occurs, the impossible becomes inevitable. The man who once transported people began to transport dreams, and the first of those dreams was his own. So don't keep this to yourself. Share this video with someone special, someone who might need to hear exactly these words today. It could be a friend, a family member, someone feeling discouraged, thinking there's no way out. Sometimes a simple message like this is all it takes to reignite hope and change an entire life. I wholeheartedly thank you for staying with me until now. Every minute you dedicate to your own growth is an investment in your new reality. Continue with me on this journey, because in the next video we will take another step towards expanding your consciousness and creating the life you truly deserve to live. I'll see you there.